From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Issue 1, off to the races.
This November, 2.5 months from now, voters will have their say on whether his or her Congress member is worth re-electing. All 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are up for election, and 36 seats of the 100 members of the U.S. Senate. As of today, the Republican Party controls the House, and as of today, the Democratic Party controls the Senate. And also, as of today, polling is giving us an inkling as to whether these majorities maintain their status quo after Election Day, or whether either the House or the Senate will flip. Well, get this. According to a new NBC Wall Street Journal Marist poll conducted 3 weeks ago, July 28 to 31, the Senate, now Democratic, will flip to the Republicans. The poll found that 43% of registered voters, that's registered voters, say they want the Republicans to control the Senate as compared to 41% who want the Democrats to retain control. As for the House, 43% want the Republicans to retain control, no flip, as compared to 41% who want the Democrats to gain control. Republicans may preen over these numbers, but they should keep in mind that 50% of registered voters think Congress on the whole has been one big collection of do-nothings, as compared to 3% who say it has been very productive.
Question, is it likely that the Marist poll overstates Democratic strength? Pat Buchanan.
I think the Republicans are going to win the Senate, John, very narrowly. They're going to hold the House. They may gain a couple of seats. But, you know, what are the Republicans going to get? The Congress's approval was at 14% in a poll a week ago, NBC poll. They're going to get that. Even if they got the Senate, they're not going to be able to overcome a filibuster by Harry Reid's Democrats. They're not going to be able to overcome a veto by the president. So they're going to have to compromise on him, and that with him, that's going to come at the expense of Republican principles. And finally, John, you ought to remember, remember that 80th Congress, Republicans took over both houses in 1946. Harry Truman pounded that to a pulp, the no-good, do-nothing 80th Congress, and won re-election, or election in his own right. So I'm not sure that Republican control of the Congress the next 2 years is going to be a great political boon to the party.
Are you making a prediction here or not?
I think if the Republicans control both houses of Congress, they're going to have problems not producing themselves in 2016. Yes.
Well, I just don't think Republicans are making all those calculations. I think right now, winning isn't everything. It's the only thing, actually.
Eleanor, winning is everything.
Winning is everything. It's the only thing for Republicans going into November. They really want to get the Senate. And where the races fall, 6 of the 7 most competitive races are in states that Romney won by big margins. So the Republicans are really going to have to screw up to not take control. But they are perfectly capable of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, because they're on this kind of impeachment kick, or let's sue the president kick. Obamacare is turning out to be pretty successful. It's not going to be the silver bullet. Benghazi is sort of frittered away, and people hate Congress. So I think there's a chance that the Democrats could hold their own, but that it won't be the shellacking that people fear.
Susan.
Okay, so you've got 10 Senate seats, 13 House seats held by Democrats that are toss-ups. Only 2 Republicans in either the House or the Senate are toss-ups. Just those numbers alone suggest Republicans have a far better chance. But if you look at individual poll numbers, it tells a different story. The leads that these Republicans have are small, and there's 90 days left, and the Democrats are outraising the Republicans. So as Eleanor said, they are outraising them.
Money.
In 14 of the key races, the Democrats are far outraising the Republicans, and that's going to give them a real advantage here. And I think, as Eleanor said, Republicans could do something that happens between now and November that makes it harder for them. Certainly it wouldn't be unprecedented for that to happen. And I also agree with Pat. If the Democrats lose and Republicans take over the Senate, therefore we'd have Republicans in the House and the Senate, it's going to be difficult for them to govern, not only because we have a Democratic president, but because there are key issues they don't agree on. They're going to fight, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on them, and their approval ratings are terrible as it is in Congress.
You're aware that this is an off-year election?
It's a midterm election, so it's not a presidential election.
Meaning, what's the turnout in off-year election?
It's lower, but it's higher than, say, an off year, say, which would be the last election we had, where just a few governors were up. So in a presidential election year, there's much higher turnout, but we've been seeing higher turnouts lately, people becoming more interested in these elections. And so it's possible we may see more turnout. However, that's going to hurt Democrats if you get just your more impassioned people turning out. It usually helps the underdogs.
Here's the data, if you believe it. In off-year elections, the voters who turn out, e.g., likely voters, are generally older, more politically engaged, more likely to have an axe to grind against the incumbent party in power. The results are very different for registered voter polls.
Well,
Are you calculating that into this?
That's part of the reason why people think Republicans could take over the Senate, because they are not the incumbents in the Senate. Older voters tend to vote Republican, and say you get impassioned conservative voters turning out, that could help them. However, Democrats could gain from Hispanic voters turning out, especially if the president decides to take key executive actions in this summer that would help Hispanics who are here in the country, perhaps living here legally. That could boost popularity for the party.
Executive amnesty will set the country completely on fire. I do agree it might get out the Hispanic vote, but you will have red state Democrats denouncing the president for doing it, for engaging in unconstitutional action.
I think they're willing to lose those Democrats.
It would be a tremendous firestorm, which would really polarize
Executive amnesty is your word and the word that people on the right are putting out, but that's not what the president is going to do. He's going to act within his own constitutional boundaries. Let's see what he does. It's more.
Is there deep pessimism about the country and the leadership of the country?
Yes, I think there is.
Is that going to influence how people vote?
Of course it is. And the single most powerful influence on the attitude of the average American is the economy. And we still have a very, very serious and very, very slow-growing economy with a lot of people being hurt, a lot of people on part-time work, very, very, very weak improvements in their standard of living compared to where they see the, shall we say, the upper 1%, as the cliche goes. Yeah. So I think that's going to drive a lot of people, and it's going to be held and the responsibility for it is at the feet of the president and of the Democrats.
But which party wants to do something about that and has specific proposals out there? It's the Democrats. And if they can get their people to the polls, Nancy Pelosi said a couple of weeks ago, half of our supporters don't even know there's an election. So you got to get those people engaged, and some of these issues that we've talked about already could get those folks engaged.
Democrats are great at get out to vote. So
the question is who these people who are being hurt, who do they hold responsible for this?
I think they look at the Republican Congress more.
They look at the president always. The president is the leader of the country. He's not on the ballot, but he's the leader of the Democratic Party, and that's why the Democratic Party.
He's not helping the Democrats, but the Republicans aren't helping the Republicans, and the Republican Congress has basement low ratings.
The 1,000-point drop in the Dow in the last couple of weeks, I think, is going to have an impact on the economy and on this election.
Okay.
Some of the 1%ers won't vote.
It's 10%.
Exit question.
10%ers, okay.
Please restrain from interfering with the progress of the show. In 2010, Obama took a self-described shellacking in the midterm elections. Are the Democrats in for another shellacking? Yes or no? Pat Buchanan.
I think they're in for, I think they're going to lose the Senate, and I think the Republicans might pick up a couple of seats in the House, because usually they win the House even when they got a lower electoral turnout.
Give me a yes or no. We got to move fast.
Given the nature of the map, I think the Republicans are not going to do as well as they anticipate, and there are some Democratic surprises out there. Michelle Nunn in Georgia, Allison Grimes in Kentucky. No shellacking.
It'll be a healthy victory, not a shellacking for the Republicans.
That's right. You mean they're going to win over the Senate?
I think they'll win the Senate and they'll pick up seats in the House based on the map currently.
That's a shellacking.
Well, shellacking would be if they're picking up 40 seats in the House. They won't do that. They'll get a majority in the Senate. They won't get the 60 votes they need, though, which would allow them to do whatever they wanted.
Well, we may be in a problem with nomenclature.
Well, I think ultimately this will be seen as a victory for the Republicans, because they'll pick up enough seats both in the Senate and the House to be able to establish that.
I predicted 4 months ago that the Republicans would pick up the Senate.
Well, your prediction was right on the mark.
It was, what, insightful?
Well, insightful, and actually, when you think about how far in advance you predicted this, it was actually...
Well, that's part of the wisdom of age.
Stab in the
Don't
dark.
forget the McLaughlin Group has its own website, and you can watch this program or earlier programs on the web at any time from anywhere in the world at McLaughlin.com. Could anything be simpler or more enticing? McLaughlin.com. Issue 2, Capital Punishment.
Closed his eyes, he went to sleep. Then he started gasping, and he did. He gasped for more than an hour and a half.
Witnesses to the lethal injection of Joseph Rudolph Wood last month in Arizona said Mr. Wood gasped and snorted over 600 times before dying. Normally, inmates who are lethally injected die within 10 to 15 minutes. But Wood was not pronounced dead until nearly 2 hours after the injection. 1 hour into the execution, Woods' attorneys phoned a judge to file an emergency appeal to stop the execution. But before the judge could rule, Wood was dead. He was convicted for the 1989 shooting deaths of his estranged girlfriend, Debbie Dietz, and her father. Wood was on death row for 23 years.
Everybody's more worried about, did he suffer? Who really suffered was my dad and my sister when they were killed.
Wood died from a lethal combination of the drugs midazolam and hydromorphone, drugs that sedate and stop someone's breathing. The drugs were injected 15 times during the execution before Wood died. The two drugs are a mixture also used in Ohio earlier this year on convicted killer Dennis McGuire, who gasped for nearly 1/2 hour before dying. Both the Ohio execution and now the Arizona execution have caused the governors of those states to launch reviews of the execution process. For years, the drug, pentobarbital, was used in lethal injections, but now is in short supply after its European manufacturers decided to stop selling it to U.S. prisons. The EU does not have the death penalty. Despite state moratoriums issued in the wake of some so-called botched executions and others due to people found innocent after being executed, 32 U.S. states have the death penalty, as compared to 18 states and the District of Columbia, where it is outlawed. And the states that have the death penalty continue to execute. Convicted rapist and killer Michael Worthington was put to death in the state of Missouri, making him the first inmate to die by lethal injection after the botched execution of Joseph Wood.